It has been 25 years since the last undisputed heavyweight title fight, Lennox Lewis and Evander Holyfield. I hadn't like really thought about how long it had been. Like technically, this is really the first undisputed title fight we've seen in our lifetime at the heavyweight division in boxing. I mean, I remember as a kid, Vladimir Klitschko was just dominant, and then it only really got exciting lately after Tyson Fury beat him, and obviously the whole Wilder and Joshua saga, and now there's a new undisputed heavyweight champion, and that is Alexander Usyk, who becomes the first man to defeat Tyson Fury. Usyk won the fight, split decision, 114 to 113, 115 to 112, and then the other judge gave it to Fury, 114 to 113. And this was a close fight. It was a great fight. I thought it lived up to the billing, like to the max, because for the past few years we've been hearing about these guys and how they need to fight each other, and it finally happened in Saudi Arabia. Like I said, that guy Turki Al-Sheikh, he just makes the big fights happen, and this one was no different. But what did you think of the fight itself?
Yeah, so for the fight itself, we can just really start from the jump, I guess. And I guess I'll just come out and say that it felt like to me like Tyson Fury was clearly the better fighter, and probably could have even pulled away even more if he had just given the respect to Usyk that Usyk deserves. But Usyk really only was just super reliant, dependent on his left hand, and got a few body shots in and what, but Tyson Fury seemed a lot more well-rounded, and was the one landing the more I guess crafty punches and all that. And then we all know by now, by that eighth round is where the tide really started to turn in Usyk's favor, and he had Tyson Fury knocked down up against the ropes and at the end of the ninth round, and there is just you knew it was it was truly at stake and on the line at that point in the fight, and the rest of the fight is just it delivered on all fronts, and we got, I'd say, even with a split decision, we still got a clear view of who the true heavyweight champ is in Alexander Usyk. I think you could go to say, like, obviously not his most best complete performance, but when you're standing across from the arguable heavyweight GOAT in Tyson Fury, like, there's only so much that you're really going to be able to I guess as much talk as you're really going to be able to back up at the end of the day.
To
The
be
goal
fair, Usyk didn't really talk too much leading
that
up
too,
to it. He's a
yeah,
pretty silent guy for the most
yeah, it
part.
was exactly, it was Tyson Fury doing the jawing and stuff. But yeah, Usyk is all business all the time. He's just an absolute revelation to watch.
I mean, he's
Yeah,
one of the best, dude, and obviously handing Tyson Fury his first career loss, that's an achievement amongst itself. But when you think of Usyk's whole career, Olympic gold medalist, he was the undisputed cruiserweight champion, and now he's the first undisputed heavyweight champion since 1999. It's just unbelievable to think about all that this guy has done. I mentioned at the top of the show, obviously, these past few years, we've really just heard Fury, Wilder, Joshua, and Usyk has been that like boogeyman who's really like been off to the side because those other guys are bigger stars and bigger names. But Usyk has finally proved that he's the best. Tyson Fury beat Deontay Wilder. He got his belts. Usyk got his belts from Joshua. And this was the fight that we always wanted to happen, and it obviously did, and it lived up to the hype. And I'm glad that we can be sitting here right now talking about an undisputed heavyweight champion that's the caliber of Alexander Usyk. But
yeah. There was like Usyk. Like, I think Usyk had his back up against the wall more than it really even seems like. There was groin shots he was dealing with, and
Fury definitely likes to test those waters in between, like
yeah,
what's
man.
legal and what's not.
Yeah,
That's for
dude.
sure.
At a point in a fight, I think it was fair to say something like 79, 75 Fury, and then obviously the knockdown happened, and that's where Usyk took complete control over. But I guess for me, at the end of the fight, I was pretty like firm in a 115, 113 for Usyk. Um,
I think
but
you mean 112. Or, wait. The math is like always going to screw me up with boxing because more rounds.
yeah,
But I
I
think you mean
agree.
either 114, 113, or 115, 112. Because I feel like I made a typo on my Instagram thing about it. It's,
I mean,
I know what you mean.
I think yeah, I guess it was still close enough that 114, 113 is appropriate.
I mean,
But
that's what I had it as. I thought that it was really, really close.
yeah,
And I feel like you want that in this big of a fight, though, you know? Like, it seemed like Fury was pulling away after, like, a little bit. But then, like you said, the end of round 8, early round 9, like, it was really starting to, shift in the other direction. And obviously, after the big knockdown and almost really finishing Fury in the ninth, it just seemed like Usyk was running away with the rest of the fight. And you were like, if he can do something else spectacular, he's going to win this by a mile. But if, even with the knockdown, it was still obviously super close. One judge didn't even give him the fight, which is, I don't know if I really like, I don't really like that, if I'm being honest. But, I think the right guy won at the end of the day. I think, even though it was a split decision, I think that we definitely still learned what we needed to learn from this fight. It was close enough. That just speaks to the level that both of these guys are at, and we have the automatic rematch clause in October, most likely, if that's like what they're thinking about. I heard Usyk might have like a jaw issue, so maybe Fury will fight someone else in the meantime. But you really can only just wait and see when it comes to that type of stuff.
yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'll try to give the judge some sort of benefit of the doubt. Kind of like I said before, at least early on, where Fury was the more crafty puncher in terms of keeping it flicking his jab, the overhand. He had some uppercuts and whatnot in there. So, but I mean, still like that. Yeah, that knockdown in the ninth round was just it was too big to obviously uh, you know, not really turn the tide. Even just speaking for Usyk, like if he couldn't capitalize after that, even after the bell, then you know, I think it would be a lot more easier to, I probably wouldn't be a split decision at all, and it would be in Fury's favor. But
I mean, I think Usyk, he was just way more confident after that knockdown. Like it just seemed like a switch had flipped inside of his head, and like I think like the commentary team laid it out pretty well. Like they said, when you could see that you've hurt your opponent, that definitely gives you a little bit of extra juice because it seemed like we were on our way to a Fury decision, but Usyk obviously turning the tide with that big shot. And you wonder what was going through Fury's mind at that point too. I mean, all this build up, he's been calling him a little guy, this guy can't touch me, and he almost knocked him out pretty badly there in the ninth. And I think, like I said, you can kind of thank the ref because you could argue that fight could have been stopped, but
mm-hmm.
I'm glad that they didn't. We're dealing with Tyson Fury, obviously. This is a guy who's been knocked down many times and always gets back up. And, to his credit, he did in this fight. Usyk hits hard for a guy who maybe was not a traditional heavyweight and as big as Fury is. And I thought the size difference, when they were in the ring with each other, you could really see that. I don't know if you noticed that too, especially in those rounds that Fury was winning, because he would hit him with like a check hook, and it would almost look like a jab because of how far away he was. Like it's kind of just crazy to think about that. But Usyk, he stuck with the basics and he found a way to win, which is ultimately what's made him so good. And that 1-2 was there for him kind of throughout the fight, but more so after that knockdown. I mean, we talked excuse me, we talked about those early rounds kind of setting the tone at first, but then Fury adjusted so well. And, back and forth, back and forth. That's what you want with the two best fighters in the world. And, we talked a little bit before the show about number one, pound for pound. And how great is boxing right now that you can technically argue four different people, Usyk, Crawford, Canelo, or Inoue. You could make an argument for all four of them. I honestly couldn't even tell you who my pick would be. I think you wouldn't be wrong if you picked any of them. But isn't that just amazing?
Yeah,
Honestly,
yeah, it's all happened like pretty recently, to be honest. At least with three of them, and then obviously some point we'll see Bud Crawford back in there. But
Yeah,
And
I think the Spence fight really helped Crawford's
yeah,
case because nobody thought that that was going to be one sided like it was. I mean, Inoue, we've talked about him before, obviously, has all the talent, probably is number one pound for pound in terms of skills, but just you have to argue about what opponents that he's gotten. And Canelo, it's the exact opposite. He's had every great opponent in a lot of different weight classes, passed most of those tests. And now you have Usyk, obviously, who just defeated Tyson Fury, handing him his first loss. And now he's the undisputed heavyweight champ. So how could you say he's not the baddest man in boxing? But overall, really cool event. And like I said, Saudi Arabia, they deserve, those guys over there deserve a lot of credit because they've really put together all of these fights that the fans want to see. And, there was a time a few years ago where I didn't know if we'd see Fury versus Usyk. And Al Sheikh, he's really figured that out for boxing. And I think that's going to make him and those guys over there one of the best promoters in the sport. But any closing thoughts from you?
yeah. So I mean, it almost feels like it just came and went, to be honest. But I mentioned when we were talking the Inoue fight after that, Alexander Usyk, he would be able to make his case after this fight for that number one spot. And I mean, you know, he did. I mean, on top of that, like he had to rally like in the middle of the fight, closer to the end of the fight, and still get the win that way. Like, I think he did a great job in making his case for the number one spot. So I'll
Yeah.
leave it at that.
We'll let everybody else debate who should be number one. We can't get slammed for our picks. This isn't first take. I'm not just gonna like spout out a name and then disrespect all the other three. But I think that, like I said, it's more so a statement of just how far boxing has come these past couple years. That we have all these stars at the very top of the sport, and I think it's only going to get better over the course of the year and a couple of years after this. I think we're really seeing a new dawn in a sense with this sport. The politics side of it, it's starting to go away a little bit. I mean, it'll always be there, in some capacity, but we're seeing things go into the right direction, and I'm really excited about it. But next week we'll be back to our MMA roots. Honestly, check out the channel for a lot of different content this week. We're recording this on Monday. Obviously, it'll be out tomorrow, but tonight we're going to be doing the Combat FC 7 virtual press conference, which, even after the fact, I'm sure you can find it on their channel. And, dude, this week's going to be really fun because we have a bunch of cool things planned, hopefully a couple of interviews, obviously the vlog that we mentioned. We're going to do an extra podcast from Massachusetts that's just kind of, for fun. We're going to, test out our new series idea. We're not going to spoil exactly what that is yet, but we think it'll be fun for times like this where we're, elsewhere besides our little studio that we've cultivated here in my house. But I think it'll be a fun time. Obviously Combat FC, we're super excited for that. Like I said on the announcement pod, first time we'll be covering a pro MMA event as official media, and we can't wait to let you guys in on that whole experience because, like I said, next week we're going to have so many different videos for you guys, and yeah, we'll see you guys then. Easy guess. Hey, locker.